Welcome everyone to our Software Mind webinar called Enhancing Media and Entertainment Processes with AI Agents. So my name is Laurence Mifsud and I manage the media and entertainment sector at Software Mind. And today I shall be your humble host. Now, alongside me and back by very popular demand is our Chief Innovation Officer, Damian Mazurek. Hi, Damian. Now,
Hi.
Now, Damian, this isn't your first rodeo, right? Doing these webinars, it must be like riding a bike to you now, I would have thought.
Yes, it's as you said. This is my fourth or fifth webinar in AI area in this series. So let's say I have a little bit of experience with that. So I hope that you will enjoy today's webinar, today's presentation, and everything that we prepared for you.
Well, here's a little cheat. I've seen the run through, so I'm pretty confident that they will enjoy it, but let's see. So Damian, for the benefit of our audience, in previous webinars, you've presented on topics including large language models, how they can be implemented in business, but also presented on the possibilities of tech advancements of AI assistance. But today we're doing something a little bit different. Maybe you can explain in a few words some things about yourself, but also what our audience can expect today in terms of content.
Okay, so let's start from myself. So my name is Damian and I'm Chief Innovation Officer at Software Mind. And I'm working with the AI since 2009. So I started work in this area when it was just called machine learning. Now everyone is talking about the AI, generative AI, but this technology has some, let's call it, strong roots in different parts of machine learning. And this technology is evolving very quickly because, as we can see from the perspective of last 2 years, there's like many different advancements in different areas, starting from the models efficiency, cost optimization, up to different startup SaaS solutions and everything around that is just growing on this or thanks to this technology. And one of the main advancements in the area of the large language models and generative AI are something that we are calling it AI agents. And today we will talk about the concept of the AI agents, how we can use them in the media entertainment sector. And we will show you one case studies and one live demo that will explain to you what is the possibility, what are the benefits of this technology, and how can you use it in practice.
Thanks, Damian. I think it's clear that AI agents, in all simplicity, are going to be a huge trend in AI, and that's what really this is about today, this session. Now, having had a sneak peek at your content in the past, it's obvious that this really impacts not just the work that people can do, but how productive it can be, how productive people could be in general with this, and what people can accomplish overall. And whilst everyone is really salivating, hopefully watching this right now, over these AI agents, actually knowing what they can do for the media and entertainment sector in general is so important. And that's why we thought, Damian and myself, that will be imperative to talk about this topic in our webinar today. So let's deal some due diligence. For the format today is going to be a little bit different. We're not going to go through a plethora of wordy PowerPoint slides. In fact, you're in for a treat. Damian, you're not going to be presenting more than 2. You promised no more than 2 slides, right?
Yes, and the goodbye slide, so it will be like 3.
Okay, all right. I'll let you have that. Right, so before we dive into today's content, I want to take a moment to really ensure we're all set up for the most productive as well as the most engaging experience possible. So for the audience, I know it's a bit cheesy, but think of what I'm about to tell you as a pre-flight checklist to make sure everyone is ready for takeoff. Maybe first off, we'll be recording today's session, really important. So I'll be sharing the link and any additional resources in a follow-up email that will be sent roughly within about a week's time. If you've got any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to use the Ask a Question at least I hope it's there, ask your questions section in the webinar, and the bottom right-hand section of your screen. And please use the chat function, which should also be there. If you wish to engage with us further, please don't be shy about participating. At the end of the day, we've carefully planned the agenda to respect everyone's time, and it should be about an hour in general. So we'll aim to deliver the content within that time frame with room for questions at the end. It's really important that we get to that. So Damian, I know you're excited as I am to be showcasing some live demonstrations that you've already alluded to at the end of this with the art of the possible. And fingers crossed with that, with live demos. I'm always a bit nervous about that it all goes well. But before we go any further, I've got a question for our audience out there. And that is, what do you think are the main advantages of using AI agents? Maybe have a think about it. And if you've got 2 secs, maybe put your comments in the chat section that I referenced and take it from there. Let's get interactive and kick it off. So please put your answers in the chat. And that leaves me to say, without any further ado, Damian, I'm going to pass over the reins and you can kick us off on this journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so maybe let's start from definition of AI agents, what they are really, and because many people are speaking about AI agents, agentic systems, and everything around it, but many people understand different things when they are speaking about AI agents. So let me share my screen, and I promise you this is not the presentation. So we will use whiteboard, mirror board to explain the concept. So let's imagine that as all our generative AI technology, we need to have some kind of the AI model. In this case, when we are speaking about AI agents, our main model that will be responsible for the intelligent part is the large language model. And here we can use different types of the model based on the specific task, performance, and the cost. We can switch from models like Claude, GPT-4, 4.5, Gemma. We can use Llama models or even smaller open source models. So this is the heart of our AI agent. But AI agent by itself, it's like a part of software. So here we will have a software, we will call it agent, that is able to orchestrate a specific work of large language model. So it will be able to send the specific queries to the large language model, but also it will be able to use, let's call it, different tools. So for example, it will be able to send the request for a specific, let's call it API, or use our CRM, other production system. Another thing that agent is actively doing, it is the memory. So here we have, let's call it, 3 levels of the AI agent. First one are the task-oriented agents that are able only to do one thing, and they are stateless. So they do not need the memory by itself, because every time they have the old data from the user, and based on this data, they are using specific tools to, let's call it, solve specific task or problem. And this is the first level of the AI agent. Second one is the more context-aware agents. And on the second level, they have the specific memory. So they exactly remember our previous conversation. They remember our previous task that we put it to it. And they are able to orchestrate their specific, let's call it, work based on this memory. They also have the access to the additional data sources, let's call it data source, for example, RAG system, when we have the vector database, when we store a large number of the data there that are vectorized. And thanks to this, we are able to easy search using finding the nearest vector of the data. And thanks to this, like get the most relevant data. But what is the magic of this system? The magic of the system is that based on the, let's call it user request or user query, the agent, thanks to LLM, can decide what kind of the tool to use, what kind of the external data storage or data source to use, where to find the data, and how to use it. So at the beginning, when our user send a request, and this user can be also the automated task. So let's say this is like the input to our agent. We ask agent to do some kind of the task. For example, to check the weather. So large language model by itself cannot do this. So, but the large language model receives the query from the user saying, I want to check the weather, for example, in Warsaw. And here are the tools that I have. And this is when and how you are using these tools. And then based on it, large language model said, okay, so now I need to use, for example, weather API, and I create the request in this specific way. So the large language model will send the specific tool and the request to this tool, and then agent will execute it. And this is like the whole, let's call it the concept and the flow of the single agent. Then, of course, the response will get back to the agent. It will send it to the large language model. And based on it, large language model will construct the sentence that weather in Warsaw today is sunny, 5 degrees Celsius. And for example, yeah, the weather is great or something like this. And then it will be sent it to the user. So this is like the whole concept of the agent in the nutshell. So agent is a part of the software that is using large language model and have plugged tools, data sources, and based on the specific task or user query, it is able to determine or find out which kind of the tools it needs to use to fulfill the user query or user requirement. And this is like the basic, let's call it, variation of the agent. But in more advanced, let's call it, scenario, we want more than one agent. So for example, we want many different agents that are specialized in different type of the task. So for example, if we have like the agent that is able to speak with our CRM, which is able to speak with our production systems, or we want it to be able, for example, to generate some kind of the content, then we want the single, or even not single, but small amount of the responsibility put to the specific agent and create many different agents that will be able to cooperate with itself. And when we have a system with many agents that cooperate with themselves for solving a specific, let's call it, user requirement or user query, then we are speaking about the multi-agenting system.
So Damian, you gave an example, it's really interesting. You gave an example beforehand about the weather, and then of course it got a little bit more complex. Can you break it down to our audience in terms of what this means in practice? Where else can this be used, maybe with a media and entertainment hat on?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So basically, we can use the agents in every process that requires human decision-making process. So for example, when we have a process, and this process is in, let's call it, fuzzy logic. So we do not have at the beginning the 100% what we should do in this process or what we should to generate. And we need like the human level of intelligence to choose how to prepare us, I don't know, specific data, how to modify this process. Then we can use the agents because they, based on their intelligence, can do a very similar part. And this is like, I think the most important fact here is that they can dynamically choose what action to do in the process. So for example, we can use it in the content production process. We can use it in the infrastructure optimization process. So for example, if we are using cloud infrastructure or others, where we can modify it from the code perspective, in the infrastructure as code approach or throughout the API, we can build also the agents that will, for example, monitor the infrastructure and try to optimize the cost. We can use it in the, let's call, as I said, broadcasting and content production. We can use it, for example, in the specific event, like for the sport events, like Microsoft is doing with La Liga, where in the football match, they have the real-time analytics, real-time, like the short form of the most important parts of the game and everything around it. So we have like the ability to put there the specific agent that will be able to do this on the fly. So they will be able to analyze, put additional layers of the data, and create additional value. Because what is important then is that agents are using large language models as the source of the intelligence, so as the decision-making process. But they can use other, let's call it classic machine learning model or classic AI models that are not the generative AI. And thanks to their intelligence, know when to use those models. So for example, let's say that we have this sport event that we are broadcasting and we want to put additional analytic level, then we can use the classic statistical or machine learning models. We can plug it to the agent, and the agent will decide, for example, which statistic it should bring at this moment, and it will use like the specific model for it throughout the API.
That's great. It's just really good to paint a picture using the theatre of the mind here a bit more with these examples. Thanks, Damian. Just a short pause, maybe our audience has got some questions. Just a quick reminder with what Damian's saying, please put them in the chat or the question section. It'd be good for us to reference those later on. So Damian, back to the content. I understand that one can use this technology for storytelling and creating narratives. Now, we have generated storytelling and multi-agent engines at Software Mind, which can create narratives and create scripts, books, and images, right? Warning, subtle plug, everyone. Damian, can you showcase an example of our work here at Software Mind?
Yes, give me a second. I will just, now I will show the slides that I mentioned before. Okay, so we did a project which we are still like developing the next phases for something that we call storytelling agentic gaming engine. This is like the next level Gen AI narrative system that is built on top of multi-agentic architecture. And thanks to it, it can create a good storytelling narrative with the, let's call it autonomous NPCs, because this is for the gaming industry. And it can create, we can say it can create the book where someone will be able to be the participant of the specific events, and based on the choice of this person, of the user, it will like modify the narrative. And this is something very cool, because it is like, in my opinion, new era in media entertainment sector, where the content, whatever it is, if it is like the text content, video, movies, games, or anything around it, will be hyper personalized. And in the near future, we will be able to choose the specific outcomes based on, let's call it, our preferences, our feedback when the movie will be like playing, and based on our, and maybe not in the Europe at the beginning, but based on our, let's call it, emotional state, because we would like have the smart TVs, they will like register what is great from our body language and what's not, and then like modify the narrative when the movie, for example, when the game or anything else will be playing. And this is like very powerful technology. Why not in Europe? Because in Europe we have like small regulation around reading the emotions, but let's not delve into that right now. Let's get back to our engine.
Exactly.
Okay, so how it is working in its core. So as you can see, this is like high level agentic in architecture, because many of them are also separated on different, let's call it agents. We have here the whole cycle of the conversation or of the, let's call it gameplay. And based on the different tasks, we have different specialized agents. So as you can see, we have the agents for the world state change, we have the agents for the abilities, we have the agents for the NPCs, where we have these autonomous beings that are also playing the game with us. We have like agents that are supervisors, that are critics. So we have different roles and different specialized agents that they talk with each other to create the best narrative version that can exist in the generative AI world. And this is how it's working. So we have like the different agents that speak together, that try to negotiate some things, because, for example, if something is not good enough or some moves that player or the AI want to do are not wise, then, for example, AI critic that you can see on this picture will tell the mechanism or the user that maybe this is not the best solution, that maybe you shouldn't do this, that maybe you should try something else. And then the system will react to this and modify the plot by itself. And this is like the strong part of the system, this separation of the specific responsibilities. This is like we would have like the team on the backend of the people that together they will try to figure out the best narrative. We'll have the people that were scripting or writing the main plot, that will build, let's call it, the whole world or environment, that would write the dialogues for specific characters, that will like build the plot twist inside the stories, and many other things. Here we have the team of the AI agents that is doing it by themselves.
Doesn't matter how many times I see this, it still blows my mind, especially the ecosystem surrounding it. Maybe slight segue here, Damian. So I understand that the mechanism that the infamous YouTuber Mr. Beast, hopefully most of our audience knows about Mr. Beast, uses on his platform and on YouTube for dubbing his voice in other languages, but still using his own actual voice, is the same that we use at our company, at Software Mind. Am I right in presuming that our audience can use this in their companies? Can we give examples of that?
Yes, that's exactly the truth. So if you remember, Mr. Beast, one of the biggest YouTuber, is now creating the country or region-based channels. And all of these channels has like the same content, but only in their native language. And they are dubbing it using the voice of the specific actor, in this case, Mr. Beast and the crew that is like inside the movie with him. And how they are doing it. And this is the part for the small demo. So finger crossed. So the magic of this approach is that they are using the generative AI, especially the models and the APIs for the 11 labs, to do this process. And this is like the first level of the agent, as I said before. So for example, this is the AI agent that only do one simple task, and this is like the AI automation agent. Normally, we could plug it, for example, to additional agent that can orchestrate the whole framework if we have more than one, for example, flow. But let's say, let's analyze and try this simple flow with a single responsibility. So here we can see that we want to build something that will take all of the videos from our storage. In this case, we will use like Google Drive only for it. Then use specific models. In this case, we can use 11 Labs API, send the video to the dubbing, wait after it will be dubbed, and then upload it and upload this transcription to the drive. And what is the main magic for this kind of the workflows is that you can build it extremely easy. So using the generative AI for such AI automation workflows and agents give us one superpower. So we can build the functionality that in 1 week, maybe sometimes in a couple hours, based on how complex it is, and then test it and then launch it very, very quickly. Because in normal way, for example, the process of the dubbing is much more larger, requires a lot of more resources, it requires a lot of more time. But here, thanks to generative AI, we can do it much more faster. So for this specific, let's call it demo or example, I use something, the platform that is called N8N, which is the no-code automation platform that you can host on your cloud or on the public cloud or in the N8 provider. And thanks to it, we can build very fastly different types of the AI agent. We have also the specific, let's call it toolset here. So if we go to the advanced AI, here we have the whole AI agents, and there are the second level of the AI agents that also can, let's say, make a more sophisticated decision about what API, what tool, because here, when we put it in such an agent, then we can see that we can plug the memory, the model that we want to use, as I mentioned before, and we can put additional tools. And based on it, it will decide which tool when to use. And this is like perfect tool, this N8N, to automate our, let's call it, production workflows. But let's get back to our scenario. So in our scenario, here it is. I have like 2 different scenarios prepared for you. First one is the one when we put the movie and it will dub it, let's call it Instagram or YouTube short that I recorded like 1 year ago or something like this. And
nawet o 34%.
So my main goal is here to create a dubbing that will translate it to the English. And this workflow is designed for this. So let's get back to the screen. Of course, I will send you a link to it. Give me a second so we can choose that this is the same video. Okay. So here in chat, I will put you the link to it. So you can check it by itself. And then let's get back to our. And here in the request, I can always say what type of the language I want to use. So I always set the language. So my target language is English. So it will like cover it and dub it in the English. But I can put here other language. So I can use, well, for the almost common language in the internet, because you need to remember that this technology was trained on the data on the internet, it should work perfectly. So, okay, let's click test the workflow. So it's downloading file, sending to the API. If I have still available credits, then it should go, yeah. Then the API, and this is very something very cool, is here it's like putting the specific accepted duration time of the dubbing. So it say it will take him 99 or more seconds. And this is very important when we are using the API of the 11 labs, that this is like the minimal time, but sometimes it could be a larger amount of the time based on the, let's call it, consumption of their APIs at this moment. So now we are trying to, let's call it, wait this time. And then after it, we will like ask our API to get back the status of the dubbing. If it will be still in the dubbing, then we go throughout this again, and we are still waiting for it. And then when it will have the done status, then we will go and download the file and put it to our drive, and then get the transcription and also put it to our drive. Okay, so now we are waiting. So maybe I will show you in meanwhile the video that I dubbed before, because here we can like wait a couple of the minutes, and I know that our time is limited, so let it run in the background, and I will show you from our previous run. So it generates two kinds of the files, the text files and the MP4 file, and it's also used the name of the old file, this specific automation to do it. So let me download it. Yeah, and here we can also see the transcript from this video.
Did you know that a short nap can improve your performance by up to 34%? NASA conducted a groundbreaking study that showed how...
So as you can see, it dubbed me, but there is like the strong Russian accent in this video. And this is something that is very funny in dubbing the videos using the 11 labs, that the best dubbings are from the English to other languages. From the other languages that have very like, it's called strong accent, like for example, Polish, when you have like different type of the sh, ch, and this kind of the hard language, it will like still have the specific part of the accents in the new video. And this is something that we need to remember when we are using this, this technology. Okay.
Wow, Damian, there was a lot there, and you make it look so easy. And also a great job, because it was flawless in terms of doing a demo without any hiccups. So amazing stuff. So look, I'm sure some of our audience has questions for that later on. And I've been told by Damian that this isn't too challenging to set up also, and that's something that we can address and hopefully help you with at a later stage, should you wish. Mm-hmm. But now on to our final section. Obviously, we're going to have questions towards the end, as I mentioned. But Damian, I think now is the time to get out our crystal ball and to look into the future, because, you know, it's something that's quite captivating. Let's look at AI in the media and entertainment sector going forward. Let's look at trends. Can you highlight 2 or 3 that you think could come to fruition quite soon? What do you think is going to be popular?
Yes. So we have like 2 time scopes as the answer to this question. So in, let's call it, the time scope of next 2 years, I think that the AI automation workflows using AI agents will be extremely popular, and that the adoption of this technology for automating and streamlining the, let's call it, production content processes will be something that most of the industry will adopt. Because this technology is getting better and better every single day. We can see the huge improvement in the time scope of the last 2 years. So if we will like keep up with this speed of improvements, then in the next 2 years, this technology will be a huge game changer. The second part is the content by itself. I think that the AI-generated content will be much more popular. Because let's imagine that at this moment, we want to create a new movie, for example. So at the beginning, when we have a director and they are creating the scripts, then they are creating a specific scenes to better visualize how the movie concept should work and how they should put it together. So they are using the, let's call it, specific studios or putting the, maybe not an actors, but the people that are, acting in the very specific way. Then we can use the special effects and the 3D to modulate it and create this kind of the scene. But now we can do this with generative AI. So for example, we are just putting the script, the description, and then the generative AI, the models like, for example, Sora, can generate the whole scene for the director and for the crew, so they can better visualize it. The director can like change it, modifying the prompt, add something, and like thanks to this, he or she is able to better visualize and create this concept of the specific scenes. And I think that this is the huge game changer, because I spoke with my friends that are working in this area, and they say that, for example, they are right now doing it and building such concepts using the generative AI, and for them it is like huge game changer. The next thing is like the trailers, for example, for movies and everything around it. At the beginning, we can also use the generative AI to create it, and I know that many companies are working with it and testing in this, let's call it, in these scenarios. So this is like the smaller range of the time. There's also another bigger, where, for example, in the next 5 to 10 years, and this is my opinion, this technology will be so advanced that we will be able to generate the whole movies, the whole content based on our preferences. We will be able to have like the digital humans or digital actors that will be playing in this generated AI movies. And the whole industry, in my opinion, will change a lot because of it.
There's quite a lot there. No, I especially agree with you with reference to that latter point. Thanks, Damian. Okay, I think that just leaves us with questions now at the end, and we've got a few here I can see in the questions section. There was some bubbling in the chat, but please, as a reminder, it's not too late. Please put your questions in place. Let's deal with Oliver Wilson first. I saw his one pop up. Actually, it was a second, but let's kick it off. He says, Oliver Wilson, how much does implementation cost? Is it simple to estimate? I think this one came up when you were going through the dubbing section.
Yes. So it always depends on the, let's call it, business case and the business case that we want to address. But this simple workflow that I show you with the dubbing, it's something about a couple hours of work. It's like 2 or 3. The main challenge here is that the POC or the small workloads are always easy to build. But then we need to transfer it to the production environments, to integrate with our other systems. And the main chokeholds and the main points that consume the most of workloads or human resources that are working on it are these points: the integration part, the part where you are connecting to the third parties, and everything around it. So based on the complexity of the existing environments, it can take from 2 weeks up to 2-3 months to implement it end to end in the production environment.
That's great. Hope that answers your question, Oliver. Stephanie Gallant asks, how about confidentiality? Is there a risk to share private content to unknown third parties by using such agents or tools?
That's another great question. So it always depends because there is like 3 different scenarios here that we need to consider. The first one is that we can put a lot of this technology inside our, let's call it, public cloud environment, but still hosted by ourselves. So in this case, we are like deploying our version of the models in the model as a service approach, or just infrastructure as a service, and based on it build, let's call it, our solutions. Here, we are responsible for protecting the access to the infrastructure. The infrastructure is secured by the cloud provider. So this is like the risk that you normally have when you are working with a public cloud. The question is, are you willing to take it? And if the data are, let's call it, the value of the data is so high, then you need to have, let's call it, on your private data center, but there is still a question if your private data center are better secured than the public cloud. So there's, as you can see, many levels for this scenario. The second one is that you are using the APIs of the model providers. So for example, OpenAI, 11 Labs, Anthropic, and every other company that provide this access to their API. So here we are in this shared responsibility model. So we cannot control the models by themselves, and we always like send this data to the models, and we trust that the model provider will have the secure infrastructure. And because of this trust, the model provider is going throughout the security audits, certifications, and everything around it. But still, our, let's call it, trust is limited to the level that they are doing, and as they are, I mean, the model provider, what they are telling us that they are doing. And there's also the third option. So we can host most of this technology, but not all, but most, in our, let's call it, data centers. Then we are deciding that we will go, for example, with the open source models, that we will put it on our servers. It will be a little bit expensive at the beginning, because when we are using even the public cloud and we are using, let's call it, the APIs of the providers, we pay per usage. So there is not, we do not need a lot of the investment in the infrastructure. But when we are starting to build it on our infrastructure, then it's like we need a lot of compute power. So the expenses that we need to take are much, much higher. And there is always like this, let's call it, calculation, when the first model is cheaper and when the first model is more expensive than the second one. Because on some point of the time, using the specific models in the pay-as-you-go model, pricing model, will be higher than hosting your own infrastructure. And this is like, this is always the calculation that you need to do. You need to check the risks, check what happens if the data will be leaked, create the mitigation plan for it, calculate the costs, and based on it, make a decision.
It's great stuff. I can see two more questions here. John Williams asks, the hurdle is not just AI adoption, it's the mindset. Do we have some tips on dealing with internal resistance in companies?
Mm-hmm. So it's always about managing the change, because every new technology requires some new skill set in the organization, requires some new technology, and sometimes it requires also the change of the way that people are working. Because, and this is hard truth, that if we want to increase the productivity of our workflows or everything else, then we want to increase the output of the work or decrease the resources that are required to do this work. And many times it's correlated to this, that the main, let's call it, resource or the bottleneck for a process is the human part, because we as the humans, we get tired. We cannot work 24/7, 7 days a week, and there is like the AI that is able to do the task that at this moment we were able to do sometimes require to change the, let's call it, characteristic of our work. So we will need to do something else. We will need to upskill ourselves to use these tools to increase the productivity. And this is like with every change. For example, many years ago when we tried to build the cloud environments and migrate our customers to the cloud and help them, there was the same problem, because it also changed the way that the people are working. And I think that this is like the hardest problem, because people are not changing as fast as the technology. So here we need to go with a specific processes of change management, build, for example, center of excellence, train our people, show them how to use this technology, create some sandbox environment so they can play with it. And thanks to this, gain some skills and also be more open for it. And then when we do these steps, we can like try to adopt it on the scale.
That's great. Thanks, Damian. I can see one last one here for now. Abdullah Hamad asks, if I can pronounce that right, says, how would an agent decide on the best action to take at a certain moment? Would we have to train the agent or on some parameters?
Mm-hmm. So the agent decide based on its intelligence level and its logic, and this how good we will like describe what a specific tool is doing. So based on it, at the beginning, it is able to tell which kind of the tool use. But we can also fine-tune the model to help it make better decision. And then we just get the specific queries or prompts from the user and the outputs, so the choices which, let's call it, tools it should select it, and then fine-tune it on it. But in most of the cases, this step is not required, because mostly if we like do the good description of the tool, we use a strong enough model. And what is very important, we will put like the limited tools for a specific agent. So we will do a stronger separation of the model. So for example, if one process requires to use like 10 different tools, then we can put on top of this process or this part of the process one agent, and then use this one agent as a tool for another. So this one will know that when you want to, for example, address this, this, and this, go to this agent. And the second agent, which is specialized, for example, these 5 or 10 tools that he's using and deciding, then create the specific decision process.
Gotcha. That's all clear. Thank you so much, Damian, for that. Right, everyone. Well, look, thank you so much. That brings us about the end of our webinar right now for today. So really, on behalf of Damian and myself, really like to thank you for your time and sincerely hope that you found all of the content useful today. I know I have. If there's any section of this that you've missed, or perhaps you're super keen to watch it all over again, as a reminder, this will be uploaded very soon, essentially within a week. Maybe 2 final points from my side. If any of you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Damian or myself. We'd really love to help. And second of all, maybe more importantly, we're happy to personalize, more to the point, a demo for you based on your own individual requirements for media and entertainment, so we can fully customize it. So again, using the theatre of the mind, if there's anything else that you can think of that you're curious about and you would like us to tweak something, we can help customize. So please feel free to reach out. So that just leaves me to thank Damian and our back-end marketing team. I call them our silent assassins, for all your help putting this together. And of course, with yourselves for your time. Thank you all, and I'll leave you to it. Till the next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.